What do we do, as far as I can see, the sane people left in the room, to get a sane moderate Democrat to communicate? What is the answer?
Yeah, I'm not sure who it is or if there is one right now, but perhaps one will emerge. But when you listen to Susan and other people, not just her, and I'm not picking on her, but, if they're speaking about things that are just clearly untrue. To say Biden is unifying, he campaigned as a unifier. I'll give him that much.
Well,
and then he's passed this horrific legislation that's hurt most working people with inflation, and without one Republican vote. So there's no reaching across the aisle here. I mean, there's been no legislation that's unifying. And then he had the satanic curtain speech where he basically, as you said, Lawrence, called half the country terrorists. And, you've had that from Merrick Garland calling parents who are interested in their children's education and didn't want them learning about transgender theory when they were 6 years old. They were domestic terrorists. There was a memo that went out that said that. So that's not unifying, calling parents who care about their children domestic terrorists. So there's such a disconnect between what they say. And I think, look, you're always going to have some crazies on the right and the radical left. But you hear actual truths from the right. There's just facts, right? Biden has wrecked the economy. Biden's Afghanistan pullout was a disaster. The border is open. So Kamala goes, in front of the press and says, the border is closed. Everything's working really well. Biden says there is no inflation or it's transitory. Just tell the truth. And if you make some mistakes, just kind of, try to own up to it. I know that's not one that politicians like to do, but Biden's been, and the administration, have been particularly horrible at telling the truth. So the dishonesty starts to pile up, and that's why voters get frustrated. And they go to MAGA rallies because they just hear this insanity from the radical progressive left and the media who's, for the most part, on their team.
Where is the left? Where is the actual left? The left that supported the blue-collar workers?
Yeah,
where have they gone?
They've disappeared. I mean, this was the party of the working class. This was the party of abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And now it's the party of taxpayer-funded, whenever you want it, up until birth, right? Yeah. So, they've radicalized. Now, do I think every Democrat is radicalized? I don't think so. It's really just this, maybe it's 10% of this radical progressive left. The problem is the radical progressive left controls Biden, controls the government, controls the universities, controls the media. So they have the institutions and the arts as well. I mean, if not just Hollywood, but, the Art Institute of Chicago, where this once great, institution has been absolutely corrupted by this woke progressive left minority. It really is a minority. So I don't think the average Democrat is as radical, but they're used to voting Democrat and they just pulled a ticket and they hear Joe Biden say we're going to unify the country and he slaps them on the back and
and what would you? I agree with you. What would you say that in terms of what President Trump was saying about Liz Truss, which I was surprised by because I thought he would be a bit more disparaging, but he was very complimentary of her. What do you think about what he was saying about Liz Truss in the UK?
He's completely right. And during the Trump administration, on many media appearances, sometimes defending him, sometimes criticizing him, I always defended his economic policy. And I said the UK and the rest of the world should take a page out of the US playbook, which at the time was the Trump playbook. Now, much of it was traditional Republican, deregulation, lower taxes. But he got on board with that. Paul Ryan was a big part of that as well, and who's now treated as kind of an old Republican or an establishment Republican. But they worked together on that, and the outcomes were incredible. So I just don't understand why the UK couldn't have picked up a few of those ideas. Liz Truss and Kwasi finally have. 2 years later, and whereas Biden unwound every one of those policies. So now you've had negative wage growth, 3% negative wage growth, whereas at Trump's last 2 years it was 6.3%, but much higher for minorities, much higher for those in the bottom quartile. All the things that the Democrats claim they want.
All the facts that they
the identity groups. I mean, they're absolutely controlled, not controlled by identity groups, but they're dependent on the identity groups. That's all they have. Identity politics is all they have because their policies are so wrong or so bad.
Well, we want them to switch back to to defending
defending
the
them.
blue-collar workers,
Sure,
which is why they exist.
Or acknowledge that the policies of Trump and the right actually benefit those very identity groups that they're so obsessed about and creating all this division. It's really sad. But,
it is.
But I'm glad to see the president supported Liz Truss on this, because those are the policies that worked. And Biden paraded out this Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, who was the former governor of Rhode Island, who used to be a sensible Democrat. She fought against the unions, with pension reform. And she just was paraded out there and said that deregulation, tax reform, and smaller government is an economic policy that's never worked.
Yeah,
so
good luck
what
with
about
that
the
one.
80s and the 90s, right?
I know.